She thought her life was over when the Comanche raiders took her. But when the chief looked her in the eyes and gave her a chilling ultimatum to pretend to be his woman or face certain death, everything changed. What began as a desperate act of survival soon spiraled into something far more dangerous and unexpected. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you like the story and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The Texas sun beat mercilessly upon the small wagon train as it crawled across the vast prairie in the summer of 1867. Sarah Bennett sat rigidly on the wooden bench of her family's covered wagon, her auburn hair tied back in a practical bun, her green eyes scanning the horizon with growing unease. At 23 years old, she had left her comfortable life in Boston to join her uncle's trading expedition, seeking adventure and a fresh start after the death of her parents during the war. The landscape stretched endlessly before them, golden grass swaying in waves beneath a sky so blue it seemed painted. "Stay close to the others, Sarah," her Uncle Thomas called from his horse, his weathered face creased with concern. "We're in Comanche territory now. They've been raiding settlements all summer." Sarah nodded, her hands tightening on the reins of the two horses pulling her wagon. She had heard the stories, whispered around campfires at night, tales of fierce warriors who ruled these plains with unmatched skill and ferocity. Part of her thrilled at the danger, while another part, the sensible Boston girl she had been raised to be, wondered if she had made a terrible mistake in coming west. The attack came without warning, as these things always did. One moment, the wagon train rolled peacefully across the prairie, and the next, the air filled with war cries that made Sarah's blood run cold. Comanche warriors appeared as if materializing from the very earth itself, their painted faces fierce, their horses moving with supernatural grace across the terrain. "Sarah, run!" her uncle shouted, but there was nowhere to run. The prairie offered no shelter, no hiding place. Sarah watched in horror as chaos erupted around her. The other wagons scattered, their drivers whipping the horses into desperate flight. She tried to follow, her heart hammering against her ribs, but her wagon wheel struck a hidden rock, and the violent jolt threw her from the seat. She hit the ground hard, the breath knocked from her lungs. When she looked up, gasping for air, a magnificent paint horse stood before her, and atop it sat a warrior unlike any she had imagined. He was young, perhaps 30, with long black hair adorned with feathers and eyes so dark they seemed to hold the depth of midnight itself. His broad shoulders and muscular frame spoke of strength and power, yet his face, while stern, possessed a striking handsomeness that caught her completely off guard. Their eyes met, and for a moment time seemed to suspend itself. Sarah saw something flicker in his expression, something she could not quite name. He spoke in his native tongue, words she could not understand, then reached down with one powerful arm and pulled her onto his horse with surprising gentleness, considering the violence surrounding them. Sarah's heart raced as the warrior's arm circled her waist, holding her firmly against him as he urged his horse forward. She caught glimpses of her uncle's wagon disappearing in the distance, the other traders fleeing for their lives. She wanted to scream, to fight, but some instinct told her that resistance would be futile. Instead, she focused on breathing, on staying conscious, on trying to understand what was happening to her. They rode for what felt like hours, though Sarah knew it could not have been more than one. The warrior's grip never loosened, never hurt, merely held her secure as the landscape blurred past. Finally, they crested a rise, and below, Sarah saw the Comanche camp spread across a green valley, where a river wound like a silver ribbon through the grass. As they descended into the camp, Sarah became aware of the stares, the hostile glances from the people who emerged from their teepees. Women with suspicious eyes, children who pointed and whispered, warriors who looked at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright contempt. The warrior who had captured her ignored them all, riding straight to the largest teepee at the center of the camp. He dismounted with fluid grace, then reached up to help Sarah down. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet touched the ground, trembling from fear and exhaustion. The warrior steadied her with a hand on her elbow, then spoke to her in halting English that surprised her. "You come with me," he said, his voice deep and accented. "My name is Dakota. I am chief of this band." Sarah's eyes widened. A chief. She had been captured by the chief himself. Her mind raced with implications, with fears of what that might mean. She had heard terrible stories of what happened to captive women, stories that made her stomach clench with terror. Dakota seemed to read something in her expression because his jaw tightened. He gestured toward his teepee, and Sarah had no choice but to follow him inside. The interior was surprisingly spacious, with carefully arranged furs and belongings that spoke of a man of importance and means. Dakota turned to face her, and Sarah noticed that up close, his features were even more striking, his eyes intelligent and assessing. "You understand me?" he asked, and Sarah nodded mutely. "Good. Listen carefully because your life depends on what I tell you now." Sarah's throat went dry. She forced herself to meet his gaze, to show no weakness even as fear threatened to overwhelm her. "I'm listening," she managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. Dakota's expression was grave, almost troubled. "My people, they want to kill you. White woman, enemy, they say. Many here have lost family to your soldiers, to your settlers. They see you and see only revenge. Then why did you bring me here?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why not let them have what they want?" Something flickered in Dakota's eyes, something that might have been respect. "Because killing defenseless woman is not our way, not my way. But I cannot simply release you. My warriors, they would see it as weakness. There is only one way to protect you." "What way?" Sarah asked, though part of her feared the answer. Dakota took a deep breath, and for the first time, Sarah saw uncertainty in his expression. "You must pretend to be my new woman. My wife died 2 winters ago from sickness. If my people believe you are mine, they cannot touch you. It is our law. But it is only pretending, you understand. I will not force you to be truly my wife. You will sleep here in my teepee, but you will be safe. I give you my word as chief." Sarah stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. Pretend to be his wife, live in his teepee. Her mind reeled with the strangeness of it, the impossibility, and yet, looking into his eyes, she saw sincerity there, and perhaps something more, a reluctance that suggested this solution troubled him as much as it did her. "And if I refuse?" she asked, needing to know. Dakota's expression hardened. "Then I cannot protect you. They will kill you, probably tonight. The choice is yours, Sarah Bennett. I heard your uncle call your name." The fact that he remembered her name, that he spoke it with such careful pronunciation, struck her as oddly intimate. Sarah realized she had no real choice at all, death or deception. And yet, looking at this man, this enemy who should terrify her but somehow did not, she found herself nodding. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll pretend to be your woman. But you must promise me, truly promise me, that it is only pretending." Dakota's eyes held hers for a long moment, and Sarah felt something pass between them, an understanding, perhaps, or the beginning of trust. "I promise," he said solemnly. "You have my word as a warrior, and as a man." He stepped closer, and Sarah forced herself not to flinch. Dakota reached out and gently touched her hair, loosening it from its bun until it fell in waves around her shoulders. "We must make it look real," he explained quietly. "My people must believe. Can you do this?" Sarah nodded, her heart pounding. She understood the necessity, even as the situation's strangeness overwhelmed her. When Dakota led her back outside, his hand rested possessively on the small of her back, a gesture that would have scandalized her in Boston, but here might save her life. The camp watched as Dakota presented her to his people, speaking in his language with authority and conviction. Sarah caught enough hostile glances to know that not everyone accepted this arrangement, but none dared challenge their chief openly. An older woman approached, her face weathered but kind, and Dakota spoke to her briefly before turning back to Sarah. "This is Winona. She will help you, teach you our ways. Trust her." As the sun began to set over the prairie, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Sarah found herself standing in the Comanche camp, her life transformed in a single day from trader's niece to a chief's pretend wife. She watched Dakota move among his people with natural authority, saw the respect they showed him, and wondered what strange fate had brought her to this moment. When his eyes found hers across the camp, something in her chest tightened, a feeling she could not name, and did not dare examine too closely. The first week in the Comanche camp tested Sarah in ways she had never imagined. Each morning, she woke on soft furs in Dakota's teepee, a carefully maintained distance between them marked by a dividing line of blankets he had arranged the first night. True to his word, he had not touched her beyond what was necessary for appearances. Yet Sarah found herself increasingly aware of his presence, of the way he moved with quiet confidence, of the consideration he showed her even when no one was watching. Winona proved to be both teacher and unexpected ally. The older woman spoke broken English, learned from traders years ago, and she guided Sarah through the daily routines of camp life with patient firmness. "You learn our ways, you survive," Winona said simply. "Chief Dakota, he protect you, but you must show respect to our people. They watch you always." Sarah learned to fetch water from the river, to help prepare meals, to keep her eyes lowered when certain warriors passed. She learned which plants could be eaten and which could heal, how to tan hides and sew with sinew. Her hands, once soft and suited only for embroidery and piano playing, grew calloused and capable. But the hardest lesson was navigating the hostile stares of some of the women, particularly a beautiful young woman named Nasha, who watched Dakota with possessive eyes. Nasha wanted to be Chief's wife, Winona explained one afternoon as they worked together scraping a deer hide. Her father is important warrior. She expected Dakota would choose her after mourning period ended. Now she sees you, white woman, in that place. She is angry, dangerous. Be careful. That evening, as Sarah returned to the teepee with water, she found Dakota sitting outside, working on repairing a bow. The late afternoon sun highlighted the strong planes of his face, the concentration in his dark eyes. He looked up as she approached, and something in his expression softened. "You are learning well," he said. "Winona tells me you work hard. Do not complain." Sarah set down the water pouches, suddenly self-conscious under his gaze. "I'm trying to honor our agreement. If I must be here, I should make myself useful." Dakota studied her for a long moment. "Come, sit with me. We should talk." Sarah lowered herself to the ground beside him, careful to maintain a proper distance. Up close, she could see the weariness in his face, the weight of leadership he carried. "What did you want to discuss?" "You have been here 1 week now," Dakota began, his fingers still working the bowstring with practiced skill. "My people begin to accept you, but there are still some who question. Nasha spreads words against you, says you are bad spirit, that I dishonor memory of my first wife by bringing white woman into my teepee." Sarah felt her chest tighten. "What was she like? Your first wife?" Dakota's hands stilled and pain flickered across his features. "Ayita was kind, gentle. We grew up together, married young. She gave me 3 good years before the sickness took her. Winter sickness, what you call influenza. It swept through camp, took many. I could not save her. Could not protect her from enemy. I could not fight with bow or knife." The raw grief in his voice moved Sarah unexpectedly. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his hand. "I'm sorry for your loss. Truly, I am." Dakota looked at her hand on his, then raised his eyes to hers. For a moment, the air between them seemed to thicken, charged with something neither had anticipated. Then voices approached, and Sarah quickly withdrew her hand as 3 warriors came into view, their expressions carefully neutral as they greeted their chief. Dakota spoke with them in rapid Comanche, his demeanor shifting to that of leader and strategist. Sarah understood nothing of their words, but she caught the tension, the urgency. When the warriors departed, Dakota's face was grave. "What is it?" Sarah asked, concern overriding her usual caution. "Soldiers," Dakota said quietly. 3 days ride east. They search for something, probably for you. Your uncle must have reported the attack, asked for help." He turned to her, conflict clear in his eyes. "I could return you to them, Sarah. End this deception. You could go back to your people." Sarah's heart began to race. Freedom, safety, return to civilization, everything she thought she wanted. And yet, looking at Dakota, remembering his protection, his unexpected kindness, she felt a strange reluctance. Would that be safe? For you, I mean. Wouldn't the soldiers attack if they found this camp? Perhaps, Dakota admitted. But that is not your concern. I took you. I am responsible. If you wish to return, I will find a way. Sarah sat with the weight of the choice before her. A month ago, the decision would have been simple, obvious. But now, having seen the humanity in these people her culture called savages, having experienced Dakota's honor and unexpected gentleness, nothing seemed simple anymore. What do you want me to do? She asked softly. Dakota's eyes widened slightly at the question, as if no one had ever asked his personal preference before. He began, then stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. I want you to choose for yourself, but I will tell you truth. If soldiers come, there will be fighting. Blood will be spilled on both sides. My people will have to move camp, leave this good land with water and game. And you, if they find you here willingly, they may think you have become Comanche. Treat you as enemy too. The complexity of the situation overwhelmed Sarah. She thought of her uncle, probably frantic with worry. She thought of the life she had left behind in Boston, the safety and familiarity of it. But she also thought of Winona's patient teaching, of the children who had begun to smile at her shyly, of Dakota's protective presence, and the strange pull she felt toward him that she did not fully understand. I'll stay, she heard herself say, at least for now, until we know more about what the soldiers intend. Something that looked remarkably like relief crossed Dakota's face. You are certain? No, Sarah admitted with a small, wry smile. But I'm certain that running toward soldiers who might shoot first and ask questions later seems more dangerous than staying with a chief who has kept his word to protect me. That night, as they lay in the darkness of the teepee, separated by their careful boundary of blankets, Dakota spoke into the silence. Sarah? Yes. Thank you for trusting me. I know it is not easy. Sarah stared up at the teepee's peak, visible in the faint moonlight filtering through the smoke hole. You've given me reason to trust you, Dakota. You could have let them kill me, or worse. Instead, you've shown me nothing but honor. She heard him shift in the darkness. My mother taught me that strength without honor is just cruelty. My father taught me that true chief protects all in his care, not just his own blood. You are in my care now, even if the circumstances are strange. I will not betray that responsibility. As Sarah drifted toward sleep, she found herself thinking that Dakota was unlike any man she had ever known, white or Comanche. His strength was undeniable, but it was tempered with wisdom and unexpected gentleness. The realization both comforted and unsettled her. The following days brought new challenges. The threat of approaching soldiers put the camp on edge, with warriors riding out on scouting parties and weapons being checked and readied. Dakota spent long hours in council with his senior warriors, planning and strategizing. Sarah saw less of him, but when their paths crossed, she noticed the tension in his shoulders, the weight of decisions pressing upon him. It was during this tense time that Nasha finally confronted Sarah directly. The young woman approached while Sarah was alone at the river, filling water pouches in the early morning light. Nasha's beauty was undeniable, her long black hair gleaming, her dark eyes flashing with anger and something else, perhaps pain. You do not belong here, white woman, Nasha said in careful English, her accent thick but her meaning clear. You bring danger to our people. Soldiers come because of you. Sarah straightened, forcing herself to meet Nasha's hostile gaze. I didn't ask to be brought here. Dakota captured me and he chose to protect me. If you have complaints, take them to your chief. Dakota is blinded by white woman's strangeness, Nasha hissed. He forgets his duty to his people, to our ways. You cast spell on him, make him weak. That's not true, Sarah protested. But even as she spoke, she wondered, had something changed between her and Dakota? The careful distance they maintained seemed to require more effort lately, and she had caught him watching her with an expression she could not quite read. You see truth in your own eyes, Nasha said, her voice dropping to something almost like anguish. You feel it too, what grows between you. But it is wrong, forbidden by nature. Your people and mine, we are enemies. This can only end in blood and tears. Before Sarah could respond, Nasha turned and walked away, her back rigid with anger and hurt. Sarah stood by the river, her hands trembling slightly as she realized that Nasha had seen what Sarah herself had been trying to deny. Something was indeed growing between her and Dakota, something that went beyond their practical arrangement, something that frightened her with its intensity and impossibility. That evening, when Dakota finally returned to the teepee, exhausted from another day of counsel and preparation, Sarah made a decision. She could not continue in this strange limbo, this pretense that was beginning to feel less like pretense and more like something dangerously real. "Dakota, we need to talk," she said as he settled by the small fire inside the teepee. He looked at her, and she saw her own turmoil reflected in his eyes. "Yes," he said quietly. "I believe we do." The fire crackled between them, casting dancing shadows across Dakota's face as he waited for Sarah to speak. She gathered her courage, knowing that what she was about to say could change everything between them, for better or worse. "Nasha spoke to me today," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the racing of her heart. "She said that something is growing between us, something that goes beyond our arrangement, and I realized she's right. I've been feeling it too, and I think you have as well." Dakota's jaw tightened and he looked away into the fire. "Nasha sees with jealous eyes, but she is not wrong. I have tried to maintain distance, to honor my promise that this was only pretending. But somewhere between protecting you and watching you adapt to our ways with such courage, something changed inside me. I find myself thinking of you when I should be focused on my duties. I watch for you in the camp, listen for your voice. This was not supposed to happen." Sarah's breath caught at his admission. "What are we going to do? Your people already question our arrangement. If they knew that real feelings were developing, especially given that soldiers are coming because of me, it could tear this camp apart." "I know," Dakota said, finally meeting her eyes. The intensity in his gaze made her shiver. "But I also know that I cannot pretend anymore that you mean nothing to me. Sarah, these past 2 weeks with you have awakened something in me I thought died with Aita. You are strong and kind, brave in ways you do not even recognize. You could have been bitter and angry, hateful toward my people, but instead you have tried to understand us, to learn our ways. How can I not feel drawn to such a woman?" Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm drawn to you too, Dakota. You've shown me that everything I was taught about your people was wrong. You're honorable, thoughtful, a leader who cares deeply for those in your charge, but we come from worlds that are at war with each other. How could anything between us ever work?" Before Dakota could answer, urgent voices sounded outside the teepee. A young warrior burst in, speaking rapidly in Comanche, his face flushed with excitement and concern. Dakota rose immediately, his hand instinctively moving to his knife. "What is it?" Sarah asked, standing as well. "Scouts have returned," Dakota said, his expression grim. "Soldiers are closer than we thought, less than 1 day's ride, and they are not alone. Your uncle rides with them, and a man who claims to be your intended husband from Boston, someone named Richard Caldwell." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "Richard? But I never agreed to marry him. He asked before I left Boston, but I refused. He was controlling and cruel beneath his gentleman's facade. I came west partly to escape his pursuit." Dakota's eyes darkened with an emotion Sarah had never seen in him before, something fierce and possessive. "This man, he has legal claim to you?" "No," Sarah said firmly. "I made no promises to him, but he comes from a powerful family. He wouldn't take no for an answer, kept insisting we were destined to be together. If he's come all this way, he must have convinced my uncle that we had an understanding." The warrior spoke again, urgently, and Dakota responded in their language before turning back to Sarah. "We have decisions to make, and we must make them quickly. The council is gathering now. You should come with me. This concerns you directly." Sarah followed Dakota to the council fire where the senior warriors and elders were already assembling. She saw suspicion and hostility in many faces, but also curiosity. Dakota spoke to them in Comanche, his voice authoritative and passionate, gesturing occasionally toward Sarah. Though she understood nothing of his words, she heard her name several times, and Richard's name, and saw reactions ranging from anger to thoughtfulness among the listeners. Finally, an elderly man with deeply lined face and wise eyes spoke, and the entire council fell silent to listen. When he finished, Dakota turned to Sarah, his expression troubled but resolute. "The elder Grey Wolf has spoken wisdom," Dakota said. He says we must meet with the soldiers under peace flag, hear what they have to say. But he also says that you have shown good heart these past weeks, that you have earned right to speak for yourself, to choose your own path. He asks what you want, Sarah Bennett. Do you wish to return to your people, to this man who claims you? Sarah looked around the circle of faces watching her, these people who had been strangers and enemies just 2 weeks ago. She thought of Richard's cold eyes and controlling nature, of the life of proper Boston society that had felt like a cage. Then she looked at Dakota, at the strength and honor in his face, at the man who had protected her and kept his word, who had awakened feelings in her she had never known existed. I don't want to go back, she said clearly, her voice carrying across the council circle. I don't want Richard Caldwell. I never did. He doesn't own me, and neither does my uncle. I choose to stay here, if your people will have me. I choose Dakota not as pretense but as truth. I choose this life, hard as it may be, because it's the first time I've ever felt truly alive and free. A murmur ran through the council. Dakota stared at her, something like wonder and fierce joy breaking across his face. But before he could speak, Grey Wolf raised his hand for silence and spoke again at length. When he finished, Dakota translated, his voice rough with emotion. Grey Wolf says if this is truly your choice, made freely and with full understanding, then you must prove it before both your people and ours. Tomorrow, when the soldiers come, you will stand before them and declare your choice. If you speak true, if you choose our ways and our chief without fear or coercion, then you will be welcomed as one of us, as my wife in truth. But you must understand what this means, Sarah. There will be no going back. Your old life will be finished. Can you accept this? Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision settle over her shoulders. She thought of everything she would be giving up, the comfort and security of her former world. But she also thought of everything she would be gaining, a life of purpose and authenticity, a man who saw her as an equal partner rather than property to be controlled, a community that valued strength and courage above artificial social graces. I understand, she said, her voice clear and certain. And yes, I accept this. I choose this life. I choose Dakota. The council erupted in discussion, some voices raised in protest, others in support. But Dakota's eyes never left Sarah's face, and in them she saw love beginning to bloom, real and powerful and true. When the council finally agreed to Grey Wolf's proposal, Dakota came to her and took her hands in his, a gesture he had never allowed himself before. You honor me more than I can say, he said softly so only she could hear. I will spend my life proving worthy of your choice. That night, they sat together in the teepee, no longer separated by the careful boundary of blankets. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their childhoods, their losses, their dreams. Sarah learned that Dakota had been trained from boyhood to be chief, that he had fought his first battle at 14, that he loved his people with a fierceness that made leadership both his greatest pride and heaviest burden. Dakota learned of Sarah's lonely childhood in Boston society, of her love for reading and music, of her parents' death and the emptiness that had driven her west seeking something she couldn't name but had found in the last place she expected. As dawn approached, Dakota gently touched Sarah's face, his calloused fingers infinitely tender. Whatever happens today, know that you have given me a gift I thought I would never receive again. You have given me hope and love and a future I want to build with you. Sarah leaned into his touch, feeling utterly safe and utterly certain. We'll face it together, she whispered. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. The soldiers arrived at mid-morning, a column of cavalry with her Uncle Thomas and Richard Caldwell riding at the front. Dakota led a delegation of warriors out to meet them under a white flag of truce, and Sarah walked at his side, her hand clasped firmly in his. She saw her uncle's face transform from relief to confusion to anger as he recognized her. Richard's expression was cold fury barely contained. The cavalry captain, a grizzled veteran with hard eyes, surveyed the Comanche party with obvious suspicion. Miss Bennett, the captain called out, are you being held against your will? If so, speak now, and we will secure your release. Sarah stepped forward, Dakota's hand still in hers. I am not being held against my will, Captain. I am here by my own choice. Sarah, what madness is this? her uncle demanded, spurring his horse closer. We've been searching for you for 2 weeks, sick with worry. Richard came all the way from Boston when he heard of your capture. Come away from that savage and let us take you home. He's not a savage, Uncle Thomas, Sarah said firmly. His name is Dakota. He is chief of this band, and he saved my life when his warriors wanted to kill me. He has shown me more honor and respect than any man in Boston ever did. Richard's face flushed dark red. You're clearly suffering from some kind of delusion, Sarah. Perhaps the trauma of your capture has affected your mind. Come with us now, and we'll see you get the care you need. I'm not delusional, Richard, Sarah said, her voice sharp. I'm thinking more clearly than I ever have. I refused your proposal before I left Boston, and I refuse it now. I don't belong to you, I never did. You heard her, Dakota said, his English heavily accented but clear. Sarah chooses to stay with my people, to be my wife. This is her decision made freely. We want no war with you, but we will not give her up. The captain looked between Sarah and Dakota, his expression calculating. Miss Bennett, I must ask you directly, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer. Are you truly choosing to stay with these Indians of your own free will? Do you understand what you're giving up? There will be no help from the army, no protection from the government. You'll be considered as one of them. An enemy if conflict arises. Sarah met the captain's eyes steadily. I understand completely, Captain. And yes, I choose to stay. Dakota has offered me something I never had in Boston. True freedom and partnership. I love him, and I love the life I'm building here. Please tell my family back east that I'm alive and well, and that this is my choice. Her uncle looked devastated, but also, Sarah thought, perhaps a little understanding. Sarah, are you absolutely certain? This man, this chief, he treats you well? You're not afraid? I'm not afraid, Uncle Thomas, Sarah said, her voice softening. Dakota treats me better than any Boston gentleman ever did. He sees me as a person, not as property or an ornament. I'm sorry to cause you worry, but I'm happier than I've ever been. Richard's horse danced nervously as he jerked the reins in fury. This is preposterous. Captain, you can't seriously be considering allowing a white woman to remain with these savages. She's clearly been brainwashed or threatened. The captain studied Sarah's face for a long moment, then looked at Dakota's protective stance beside her, their joined hands. I've been on the frontier for 20 years, Mr. Caldwell, and I know the difference between a captive and someone who's made a choice. Miss Bennett appears to be in her right mind and speaking freely. He turned to Sarah one last time. Miss, this is your last chance. Are you absolutely certain? I am certain, Captain, Sarah said firmly. Thank you for coming to look for me, but I'm exactly where I want to be. The captain nodded slowly, then addressed Dakota. Chief, I'm taking this woman at her word. But know this, if we receive any reports that she's being mistreated or held against her will, we'll be back with a full regiment. Do you understand? I understand, Dakota said with dignity. Sarah will be honored and cherished as my wife. You have my word as chief. As the soldiers prepared to leave, Sarah's uncle rode forward one last time. Sarah, I don't understand your choice, but I can see you've made it with clear eyes. I hope you find the happiness you're seeking. If you ever need help, if you ever change your mind, send word and I'll come for you. Thank you, Uncle Thomas, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. I love you, and I'm grateful for everything you've done for me, but this is where I belong now. She watched as the cavalry column turned and rode away, taking with them her old life and all its familiar certainties. When they disappeared over the horizon, she turned to Dakota and found him watching her with profound love and admiration. You gave up everything for me, he said wonderingly. Your family, your world, your people. No, Sarah corrected, pulling him close. I gave up a world that never truly fit me. I found my people right here. That evening, the camp celebrated with a feast. Grey Wolf performed a marriage ceremony according to Comanche tradition, binding Sarah and Dakota together before the entire band. Nasha was there, her face sad but resigned, and later she approached Sarah with grudging respect. You are braver than I thought, white woman, Nasha said quietly. Perhaps you are worthy of our chief after all. I will not make trouble anymore. Thank you, Sarah said sincerely. I hope we can be friends in time. As the stars emerged in the vast Texas sky, Dakota led Sarah away from the celebration to a small rise overlooking the camp. They stood together, his arms around her, watching the firelight dance below. I never imagined this, Sarah said softly. When you pulled me onto your horse that day, I was terrified. I thought my life was over. Instead, it was just beginning. Dakota turned her to face him, his eyes reflecting starlight. You have made me whole again, Sarah. You have given me a future I want to wake up to each day. I love you with everything I am. And I love you, Sarah whispered. My chief, my protector, my partner, my love. He kissed her then, deeply and tenderly, sealing the promise they had made to each other before their people in the stars. When they finally returned to their teepee, it was no longer as chief and pretend wife, or even as protector and protected, but as husband and wife in truth. Two souls who had found each other across impossible divides and chosen love over fear, courage over comfort, and a hard but authentic life together over easier but empty alternatives. In the years that followed,